Welcome to our podcast, Tell Us a Story, a laid-back place where people come in to share their gift of gab and tell us their most interesting true life stories while we talk about different topics from all over the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a treat today. We're flying the friendly skies. Robert Wittman is in the house. Robert is an Air Force veteran and current flight captain. He always seems to be high-spirited and just a fun guy to be around. Trust me on that. I won't say he loves to travel because it may sound cliche, but then again, who knows? Let's not waste any time and get right into it. Robert, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hi,
welcome.
Robert.
Frenchie, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling like you did not even introduce yourself, but that's okay.
Well, that's why I figured I should give you a little bit of airtime.
Oh, okay.
This is the right thing to
here's
do.
Babu. I'm Frenchie. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Robin. Robin is in the
Who's
house.
Robin?
right.
Who's Robin? Is
It's
that Batman's accomplice?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you Batman, Robin? Robert? This is going to be a tongue twister,
That's
right?
right.
Robert?
That's right. Robert
and Robin.
R&R.
Robert and Robin.
That's it.
Oh.
That's hard
Just
for
think
me.
of his name as Rockin'. That should be his nickname. Rockin' Robin.
Okay.
Just Rock, right? Rock
it.
and Robin. That'd be so
R&R.
awesome. Don't you think?
R&R. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, we're so off topic, but that's okay. We can get right into it, Robert. You feeling it?
I'm feeling it.
It's all in the atmosphere, right?
Yes.
It's the high altitude is tripping us. That's what it is.
That's it.
All right, Robert, you're a pilot. You're the captain of your own. Well, you can't use that, huh? Your own plane. How's that? I mean, was that a childhood dream of yours?
Absolutely. It's ever since I can recall. I mean, I was probably 5 years old when I first can have a vivid memory of aviation.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up. My mom was from Central America, from El Salvador. So we grew up flying back and forth to El Salvador
Okay.
to spend our summers, since both my parents worked, in order to have somebody watch us. They would fly us out to El Salvador, and then we stayed out there with our grandparents. We had cousins and the whole gamut. So we had a whole nother life that we lived over there.
Oh.
But for me, all I can recall is the fun of flying. So we would fly on Taka Airlines. I call it Take a Chance Airline. It's the Salvadoran national airline.
You may make it, you may not.
But anyway, so I grew up on that airline, and they started off with, I think it was Electra's, the type of airplane that it was. And they had 4 motors four engines out on the wings that were turboprops, big old propellers. And I recall sitting at the window on the wing, basically, to look out. And I just loved when the airplane started, or when the engines would start, this big old black plume of smoke would come out, and they would crank up. And then it was that was great. The takeoff was phenomenal.
I love taking off.
And then the landing was great for me. It felt like a year, an eternity when we crossed the Gulf of Mexico. It felt like as a kid.
Yeah.
And so that was complete boredom for me until we got ready for the landing. Then it was fun.
Yeah.
So that was my experience with aviation. Just started going back and forth to El Salvador. And then I just knew from, like I said, I think probably since I was 5 years old, that's what I wanted to do. So
That's truly amazing, by the way, because there's not that many people who actually get to do
your childhood dream.
what they dreamt of.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So I feel like I'm very blessed that I've been able to do that. And so I made it my goal in life to try to get there if I could. And so I just said, okay, I guess I got to study, be good in math and science and that kind of stuff.
Everything
so I focused.
I don't like. Yes.
So I focused on that when I was in school, and I did. I think I did fairly well. And then the other part, the irony of it is, so back and forth to El Salvador on Taka Airlines. Back in the day,
you know what I imagine, by the way, when you say Taka Airlines? I imagine, those movies when you see those buses with animals on top. I feel like there's goats and stuff, and you're sitting next to them.
But the irony behind it is that back in the day, Eastern airline pilots, when they would finish their time at Eastern, a lot of them would go over, of all places, to Central America, to Taka, and fly for them.
Oh.
Here's the irony. One of my neighbors in New Orleans was one of these pilots.
Seriously?
Oh, wow.
He became, his name was Bruce Hall, and he became one of their chief pilots, which is like the head muckety-muck for the aviation department. And it was in high school that I was going to El Salvador with my sister. We were going for a summer, and he was the pilot of the airplane. And he knew that I wanted to fly.
Oh, cool.
So that was in the 70s, before any of these restrictions post 9/11, where nobody can even do much as far as getting up into the cockpit. So he ended up coming back and saying, hey, you want to get in the seat, in the jump seat, and watch the takeoff? Yeah. And I was like, absolutely.
I guess so.
So I got to see the takeoff from New Orleans, and I flew all the way into Belize. And then he kicked me out in Belize and put my sister in, and she got to see Belize to El Salvador.
Oh, that's super
And for
neat.
me, that was, just the icing on the cake, of my dreams, going, this could really happen.
That solidified it.
Yeah. And so my focus growing up has been, okay, what do I got to do? What schools teach aviation?
Right.
And so I had the irony here too is that I retired 26 years in the military, but I had no inkling ever to want to even join the military. That wasn't even on my radar.
Oh, wow.
It happened, and I'll go into that in a minute as well. Yeah. But anyway, so I said, what schools? I started looking around. And then I come to find out that Nicholls State University here in Thibodaux had an aviation program.
Not anymore, though, huh?
No, it was in existence for about roughly 20 years, maybe 25.
Okay.
I was never even aware of that.
Yeah,
I've been
me
around
neither.
this area. Yeah.
And everybody I talk to goes, oh, man, I wish we had it today, because,
I know.
they would be so interested in doing it.
Sure.
So the airplanes were kept out at Schriever Airport.
Okay.
Right.
And the program was designed by a doctor who lived right here in Raceland. So this podcast is being done in Raceland, and it was a vascular surgeon. His name was Dr. Philip Robichaud. Lived right down the street, maybe 2 miles from where you guys are living here. Anyway, and so Phil, we called him Doc. And back in those days, the movie Jaws was out. Yeah, he was a very strict instructor. Okay, and he demanded perfection. Right. And so if he didn't like what you were doing, then we called it that he would chew you up and spit you out. Right. So the movie Jaws had just come out. And so his nickname was either Doc or Jaws, depending on if he was around. If he was going to chew you out. All right, Jaws just took a bite out of me. But anyway, so he developed this program at Nicholls. The program was called 2+2 program. It was a 4-year program. And again, his background is medicine. And he had some aviation background from his time in the Air Force.
Okay.
Way back in the day. I think it was the Air Force that he was in.
I was going to ask you about the correlation between,
And so I don't think he flew. I think he was more of a doctor in the aviation aspect. But his interest obviously was there all along. So he develops this program. It was called 2+2 program. So it's a 4-year program, of which in 4 years you would come out with 2 degrees. He realized as a medical professional the importance of staying fit to be able. Every year we have to, depending on your level, depends on what medical exam you have to take. Like right now, I take the call it the most restrictive of all the medicals. It's a class 1, class 2, class 3 medical. Class 3 is the least restrictive. That's what you would get if you went and got your first license, which is called a private pilot's license. A class 1 is required for an airline transport pilot, which is what I do today.
Okay.
A class 3 medical is good for 2 years. A class 1, I have to redo every 6 months. I have to go back and get this physical. And it's only certain medical doctors that are qualified to do it. They have to pass an exam in order to be able to do that.
Kind of like they're certified to certify you almost.
Exactly. They're called medical examiners.
Gotcha.
And so Phil was one of those. Doc was one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But he realized that at any point, you could have, let's say, God forbid, a heart attack, come up with cancer, diabetes, something that potentially would ground you.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that all of those are grounding, but something that could ground you, and your career is over
Right.
in a flash.
Mm-hmm.
You could be in a car accident,
Right.
and get severely injured, and you could no longer fly an airplane.
Right.
So his mantra was, you have to have something else to fall back on in life.
Like a backup, yeah.
Another backup plan. And that's where this 2+2 program came out. So it was a 4-year degree, of which in that time you came out with a degree in aeronautical science and a second degree of your choice in whatever you wanted. So I got another degree in business administration from Nicholls State.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a degree in aeronautical science, a degree in business, and I came out, I speak Spanish fluently. And
Nice.
So I said, I need a piece of paper that
We're going to
says I
test you
speak.
on that later, too, by the way.
Si, senor. So I said, I better have a piece of paper that says
Yeah.
that I can actually speak Spanish. So I got a minor in Spanish from Nicholls as well. And so we've had folks that got degrees at Nicholls in pre-medicine, went on to be go into pharmacy or into the medical field. Others that went into accounting, marketing, business, journalism is another friend of mine. He was
Well, that's a very clever thing to do on his part.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And
Who
there's
do
a
you
lot of
fly
folks.
for, by the way? I don't think we asked.
I fly for Delta Airlines
Okay.
today. Yeah.
So now we have to say we love Delta, right?
Oh, Delta's my favorite.
And
Yes.
it shows.
Shameless plug there.
right.
I see what you did there. That's really cool.
Yeah, so
Wait, you deserve applause off of
So
that.
I think he did a great job with this program, setting it up. And so I went through the program, and then when you would finish, when you would graduate, you came out with all of these licenses. So you came out with a private pilot's license, a commercial pilot certificate, what we call an instrument rating. Then you went on to fly multi-engine airplanes, which requires greater certification.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a multi-engine rating. And then you started teaching, learning to teach to be an instructor. So then you came out as a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor. Then you had to teach instrument flying, which is in the clouds. That's a CFII, instrument instructor. And then the top of it was an airline transport pilot. Nicholls didn't offer that top tier at the time. So when you graduated as an instructor. And so Phil said, I will only hire instructors who come out of my program because they know the program that well that I don't have to train anybody
Right, that makes sense.
to teach the way that I want it taught. And so we all did. The
He
program
sounds
was
very meticulous.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
He was. And so anyway, so we flew out of the Schriever Airport right here. We have had to have touched thousands of lives coming through the program over the years.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered virtually every branch of the military, guys that have gone on to fly in the Air Force, the Navy. I know the Army. I don't know of anybody, but there easily could have been after my time when the program was still around that maybe did the Marines or Coast Guard
Yeah.
and went into the aviation aspects of each one of those. And then we cover every airline. So Nicholls State is represented at every airline out there today. Delta, United,
pretty neat.
American.
Yeah.
I can, name people off that flew there.
But we love Delta.
Oh, yes.
And it shows.
Delta's.
Anyway, so it's something that, like I said, since I was 5 years old, and here I am 46 years later after I started flying, living that dream.
That's amazing.
And for me, I never have had to work a day in my life.
Yeah.
I tell Robin all the time that, she sees me packing to get ready to go to work because I got to leave for several days at a time.
He goes on vacation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm packing, and then I might start singing or
Yay.
something. And she's like, "You're going to work." And I go, "Yeah, how do you know?" And she's like, "Because you just get into this mood,
Yeah.
you get this big smile."
I'm leaving. leaving. I'm leaving.
Now, equally so, I get happy to come home as well. So when I walk through the door, I'm actually smiling and happy as well.
I think
awesome.
Babu, with you,
Yeah.
he's probably the other second smartest man alive.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
good, Robert.
Definitely.
Very smart.
Thank
I
you.
like it. Yeah. I just have this memory before 9/11 where I was allowed in the cockpit just to see
Uh-huh.
how it was. And I have this picture still in my head where the pilot had this big box of chocolates and he was just kind of chill, not doing anything. And I remember saying, but who's flying the plane? And he goes, oh, it's on an automatic right now, so I'm just eating chocolate. That's ingrained in my head.
Did
Yeah.
you ask him for one?
No,
Oh, I don't believe you.
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I did.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we know that you love everything about your job. Is there anything that you do not enjoy?
I would say that the part that is the least favorite is actually being away from your family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes time away, obviously.
Mhm.
On average, I'm gone about 15 days out of the month.
Okay,
It's not all consecutive.
I was going to ask you.
You know, I can fly a one day, what we call a trip is a flight, which it's not just one flight. I could do what we call a 1 day trip.
Mhm.
Right.
That one day I could fly one flight, or I could fly 4, possibly even 5 flights
Mhm.
in a given day.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yes.
So I don't look for that. And then the most that I can do right now, it's based on where you're flying and the equipment, what we call the airplane. We call them pieces of equipment,
Mhm.
what equipment you're on. And so I'm flying the A319, A320, A321 versions for Delta. We keep those airplanes primarily domestic. We do Caribbean flying with it, Mexico, Central America. We'll go down to Puerto Rico, and then we'll go up to Canada with
Puerto
it.
Rico.
Puerto Rico. And then we're going to start branching out with it, and we're going to take it to Hawaii, and then start doing some. Oh, maybe
Can
call
we
it.
go with you when you go there?
Come on, I'd love to. We always say.
We know Robert.
We love Delta.
Well, I wish people could sit in the cockpit with me. We say it all the time. It's like, you know, you see something really cool.
Uh-huh.
Let's say like, I call it a pilot's rainbow. Are y'all familiar with the
Not
term
at
a
all,
pilot's
no.
rainbow?
Mm-mm. Tell us.
So this is a rainbow that is created above the clouds. Okay, that generally pilots are the ones that see it.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens early morning or late in the afternoon when the sun's at its angles, basically, and your airplane is between the sun and the top of the clouds. So you're above the clouds. And what happens is the sun projects your shadow of your airplane onto the cloud beneath you. And around that shadow is a perfect rainbow circle.
Oh,
Oh,
And
that's
it's
got to
called-
be beautiful.
It's called the pilot's rainbow.
Yeah.
that sounds
and-
like poetry. I love
And
it.
it moves. So as the airplane's moving through the clouds, it may be in front of you, and you see
Right.
this
Oh.
circle with this shadow
Yeah.
getting
So it
bigger.
sort of lingers for a while.
Oh, it does.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's neat.
And so I'm always looking for it, like early morning
Right.
or in the afternoons and stuff, when you can really see it. Because if the cloud's right overhead, or the sun's right overhead, and
Yeah.
the clouds are beneath you, obviously I can't look straight down to
Yeah,
see
sure.
it.
Right.
But
Let me see.
I could. I
You
don't think passengers would enjoy that much.
No.
So anyway, that going back to your original question of what I don't like, it's probably the aspect of being
Away.
from home.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. I was going to say another thing. You just made me think when I skydived. That's how you say
Uh-huh.
I before I jumped out the plane, the guy let me fly the plane for like a second and a half,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what I was doing. So at some point he goes, push really hard, and I did, and the plane just went whoosh.
Yeah.
That was not a good feeling at all.
Yeah.
I did not like it.
Did you
Sandy,
ever have to take a quick dive on a major plane, on a big plane like that?
No, we used to do that with students in the Air Force. So like I said previously, I served 26 years in the Air Force. I taught most of the time throughout my career. Every airplane I touched in the Air Force, I was an instructor or an evaluator or both in them. And I think part of that came from teaching here. Because I remember when I was a primary student in the Air Force, my instructor said, "You talk an awful lot. You're probably going to be pulled back to be an instructor." And sure enough,
Robin is nodding. Yeah, she's like, yeah.
And so sure enough, I was an instructor. So what we would do, so I flew an airplane that was fully aerobatic. The first airplane I taught was the primary jet trainer. The first airplane that a student would ever fly in the Air Force was known as a T-37. And all of those airplanes are now in what we call the boneyard. It's out in Arizona. They have a big old area out there where they have all these airplanes parked,
right?
Because they no longer fly. They've been replaced. But I flew the T-37, and the T-37, like I said, was fully aerobatic, so we could go upside down, virtually straight up, not very long, and then go straight down if you wanted to. So back to your question, have you ever, had to push over?
Yeah.
So we wore flight gloves in the Air Force. It was protection against fires in the cockpit. It gave you an extra maybe 2 seconds before your fingers would burn. But anyway, so you were required to wear these gloves. So we would take the one glove off and just have it out in front of us. And then I would take the stick and I would push really, aggressively on it and hold it there. And so now you're going downhill the whole time.
Right.
And that glove would sit there. And what we're demonstrating to the students is zero gravity,
right?
Or what we call zero G's, or negative G's. And if that happens, anything that is not held down in the cockpit, a pencil, piece of paper, starts to float.
Just floating.
So you've seen the NASA guys in the big airplane.
Right,
That's what they're doing. They're flying this big parabola. They're pushing over, and the time for them to be able to float and do some practice before they come back down. So that's what I do, and I would take my glove and just release it while I'm doing that, and the glove would just be right in front of us, just floating around. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's cool.
Very cool.
You were talking about the Air Force. I just have to ask you to tell everyone about the coin story.
Oh, yeah. So we have, in the Air Force, we have what's called a challenge coin. And so every organization, every unit or squadron has a coin. And it has it relating it, say, to Mardi Gras. It's like having a crew that has their own doubloons, right? They have their logo. So every squadron will have their logo stamped on it, and everybody gets a coin pretty much in the squadron. And so what happened was, at any given time, if I'm in a group or just one other person, I can pull out my coin at any time, and if I tap it on a table or just drop it on the floor, and it makes that sound of something, this metal hitting the floor,
right?
It was the challenge, and the challenge was you have to pull out the coin. Whoever didn't have their coin on them that day then owed a beer or a round at the officers club on Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a way of building camaraderie. And
also getting broke.
Yes.
Do you have it on you?
No, I don't.
You don't have it.
I don't.
You know what
I
that
wish
means?
I had mine right now. I'm just throwing it. Ching, ching,
There's
ching.
the challenge.
I moved away from. Robin will tell you, my wallet at home. I don't carry a wallet anymore because I had a hip replacement and yada yada yada.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
So I felt at one point maybe it's this fat wallet that I'm sitting on that's causing some of my problems. So I went away from that, and now I have some little bitty thing in my front pocket.
Right.
But my wallet, people often would see the back of my blue jeans would have this little circle indentation, and people would say,
same thing.
"Do you dip?"
Problem.
They thought I dipped
right.
because it looked like a chewing tobacco
Right.
can. And I go, no, that was the imprint of a coin. And so anyway, that was the challenge coin. And that was our way in the military of promoting some camaraderie, something that is unheard of, call it, in the airline world. Just because in the Air Force or any branch of the military, you're with someone for such a long period of time.
Right.
Think of the guys on a ship in the Navy, on an aircraft carrier. They're out there. Their cruises are somewhere around, say, 3 to 6 months at a time, that they're all together.
Right.
So you build this friendship and this unity.
Right.
And obviously you're preparing to go the ultimate sacrifice of giving your life for your country, but also to back this person up that you're flying with, say in formation or just trying to help out. And so that camaraderie you just don't find in any other organization that I'm aware of,
right.
Like in the airlines. You know, I fly with someone, I may fly with someone today and never in 20 years ever fly with them again. You know, right now at Delta, we have, you know, approaching 16 to 17,000 pilots, you know, and so I may or may not fly with the same person for a long period of time.
Wow.
I do on occasion, but there are times where, for whatever reason, you just never get back together. So you'll have a great time, you know, maybe we'll go to dinner together and, you know, trade stories about family and life and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then that's it. You know, after the couple of days is over, it's like, all right, great flying with you. I'll see you again. And then hopefully we'll do this again. But if you never see the guy, you know, 15 years later, he's got gray hair, you know.
Remember when we ate together?
And then it's like, don't I know you
Very
from somewhere?
with that,
So, anyway.
Literally, yeah.
So tell me, what's something you could tell us about yourself that not many people know?
I'm afraid of heights.
No way.
Yeah.
No
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's not crazy because I am too. But I mean,
But you don't fly a plane.
No, I don't. Well,
but I would say that if you poll a majority of pilots, they will tell you that they're afraid of heights.
No kidding.
So it's different flying the airplane, even rolling an airplane upside down. You know, that first time it's a little unnerving because you've never done it. But after you get used to it, it's like you jumping out of the airplane. You know,
I would do it again.
That first time, first sensation of the free fall.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, oh, and then it's like, I like this.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, but if you get me to the edge of a cliff or like at a building that has a glass floor,
right.
or big tall windows, and you're up on the 20th floor,
I hate those.
and you stand up close to the edge, my stomach goes into butterflies just like anybody else, you know, or most people do.
Right.
So yeah, that's the irony. So
Nice.
Have you ever jumped out of an airplane?
no, there's no reason to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
I feel judged all of a sudden. I'm owning
That was
my
a great
decision.
answer, Ron. Thank you. Thank you for that.
How
many languages do you speak?
I speak two. English, and then obviously my mom being from El Salvador, we were raised speaking Spanish, which was, again, another blessing, I think, for all of us. I have an older sister and older brother, so we all spoke Spanish. The only one that didn't was my dad. So
I was about to ask, your dad is from here?
Yeah, he was from New Orleans, and my mom came to New Orleans to visit, and they met, and one thing led to another, obviously. So they were married. But it was funny because as kids, we knew that was the code.
Oh, yeah.
If you needed something from dad, you needed to first approach it with mom in Spanish. So we'd be at the dinner table, and then everybody go into Spanish, you know, and my dad would kind of give us
Robert,
the eye.
here's a scenario for you, right? I'm dad.
Yeah.
Because I only speak English. And then there's you and your sister at the table, and I'm saying, Robert, pick up your toy airplanes. Do it now. And then y'all, and then what are you doing? Now you're conversing with her in Spanish.
Mira, yo no quiero recoger los juguetes. Yo quiero seguir jugando. ¿Y cómo le decimos que todavía quiero jugar con mis juguetes de avión? Yo no sé. Vos decirle, yo no le voy a decir.
Okay, so Robert is saying he doesn't want to pick up the toy, but how is he going to tell him? He doesn't want to tell him. He doesn't want to be the one to tell him.
Yeah, so I said, you tell him, not me.
Yeah. I was going to say my dad is from Spain, and so growing up, same thing. My mom understands it, but she doesn't speak it well. So it was kind of the code too, but beyond the language, I think it's so important to as far as the culture, right? Because all the summers we spend in Spain with the cousins and all, and it's just kind of like you said earlier, it's a different world, and it was so nice to just, I don't know, escape a little bit for a while.
I always say, and I'll tell people this all the time, that for me, it was truly a blessing to have that experience. Because
did you have a nickname, by the way? Because I had a nickname in Spain.
No, well, I don't know. My cousins would call me Robertoni.
Robertoni.
Now I had an uncle who always called me Mr. Kennedy. And I think you can imagine why. So, but
what was your nickname, Frenchie?
La Rubia.
Oh, La Rubia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everybody had dark hair, and I came with my little blonde hair.
Yeah, that's Blondie in Spanish for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Nice.
La Rubia.
Yeah. No, so I think, and as you said, I think culturally, just having that exposure to a different culture in El Salvador gives you a different perspective. It broadens your perspective.
Yes.
As you go through in life, it'll give you different perspectives and outlooks on meeting people, judgment of people, just opening up your mind to other options.
Like you said, it just makes you see things differently.
So back to Spanish, we would spend, like I said earlier, we would go for 3 months at a time as kids down to El Salvador. When we would come back, there were times where I would literally, a friend of mine would come the next day that I'm home, would come up to me, "Hey, Rob, how's it going?" And I could totally understand him, but trying to form sentences in English again, for me, became a challenge. And so it was that ingrained in me. And then obviously when I went back to El Salvador the next summer, it was back to stumbling over my words in Spanish. But eventually,
I feel the same way. It's practice.
Absolutely.
And funny that you say that, because the opposite is true also. When I go back home to France, sometimes I say things and people tell me, "Why do you speak like an American?" So the words are French, but the way I turn my sentences is not correct.
Right.
Or I go, "What's this word?"
Yeah.
It's a hose. Ah, yes, a hose. But in French. And of course, once I'm there, as you said, after a while, your brain goes back, but it's almost like it needs to retrain for a second.
Yeah.
And
No, and then obviously having a Latina mama, I grew up with a lot of bad English. I'd be outside playing football. "Hey man, throw me the football." And they're like, "What? Threw me the football?" "No, it's throw me the football." "Oh, my mom would say threw me the football, So, but no, and Spanish has served me throughout the Air Force. It served me at Delta. It served me well also.
We need this podcast to be sponsored by Delta.
Yeah.
Can we
preferably
get a plug
with
or something?
free flight coupons?
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
That you're on it now.
Okay,
Robert.
yeah, I'll get all over.
Get on it.
Yeah. But no, it's in the Air Force. I did a lot of accident investigation stuff, kind of like the NTSB. And we would do this it was a week-long event at what we call the Safety Center. The Safety Center for the Air Force is stationed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we would go up to Albuquerque, and they would have this conference. It was called SECOFA, which was an acronym that stood for Systems of Cooperation Among the Forces of Americas. Wow. And so that included North America, Canada, United States, Central American countries were involved, South American countries. And so what it was we got together at the lower level echelons of the military of all of these countries, and we would come up with, if we have an accident in your country, this is what we want from you. If you have an accident in our country, how can we best serve your needs? And these are the procedures that we're going to follow. When we ironed that stuff out after a week at the conference, even though it was hosted by the United States Air Force, the conference was in Spanish.
Oh.
Now, you didn't have to speak Spanish. So for me, it was great because I did.
Right.
But because they had official interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
So they had folks that were behind the scenes, and if somebody, because you had folks, representatives from the Brazilian Air Force speaking Portuguese. And so
that's a tough one.
Exactly. So the guy speaking Portuguese would start talking, and I don't speak Portuguese, as you just said. I can pick up maybe every 10th word comes out, and I go, I know what he said there. But you would have headsets
about meat.
Yeah. So we had a little headset on, and you had the little ABC switch, and there was somebody behind the curtain who was translating in English, and then somebody translating Portuguese to Spanish, so the Spanish speakers could listen in on theirs. So anyway, it was very beneficial for me, for the Air Force in that time. And then, like I said, in my everyday use at Delta, it's come in pretty handy. And I think it's funny. Like, we'll do some Caribbean flying, and so you'll have maybe a good portion of the flight can be a lot of Latinos flying on the airplane. So when this was before I was the captain, I was the first officer, and we'd be flying along, and you level off, and the captain would look at me and say, "Hey, you want to let him up?" Which means turn the seatbelt off and talk to him. Yeah. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard to the flight, whatever. We're at level 35,000 feet. It's going to be a smooth flight. Bing, seatbelt sign comes off, yada, 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 yada. And then I'd hit him, and I go, watch this. And we had a Spanish interpreter on those flights who supposedly would then, she's a flight attendant, or he, would then come up and interpret to the passengers what I just said for those who don't speak Spanish. Right. So I would hit the captain and go, watch this. And then I would do the exact same public announcement, the PA, exactly in Spanish.
And everybody
and then
out.
About a minute after I finish, I go, watch. And sure enough, we'd get this little chime, which means we're being called from the flight attendants in the back.
She's like, "You took my job."
Exactly. No, and you'd hear the little Spanish speaker, the interpreter, and she's like, "Which one of you two speak the Spanish?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's Wittman and Thompson. Neither one of us." And she's like, "No, one of you two." So then, at some point, we go out and take a potty break. And so when I go out of the cockpit, she's standing out there, and she asks me in Spanish, "How much longer flight time do we have left?" And I looked at her like she had three heads. And I go, "What?" And she wiggles her finger at me. She says, "You not the one that speak the Spanish." And I said, "Look, I'm going to go in the bathroom, and I'm going to give it my best shot." And I said, when I come out, I'll see what I can say. So when I came out, I tell her, and she slaps me. She's like, "How you speak your Spanish so good?" And I said, "Rosetta Stone, one chapter last night." And so in the meantime, behind her, standing at the lead flight attendant, this guy 6'2", listening to this conversation, and me saying, I picked it up with one chapter, Rosetta Stone. I go back in the cockpit, and about 15 minutes later, bing, I get a call from the back there again, and it's now the lead flight attendant who was listening, and he goes, "Hey, dude," he goes, "what version of Rosetta Stone did you use? Because I want to go buy that." And I go, "Dude, I'm pulling your leg." I said, "I grew up a third of my childhood in El Salvador." And he's like, "I was going to buy that. If you were that good with one chapter, I was going to buy it." So I said, well, anyway. So I put it to use, I think, in a good way, and then it also creates a little levity with the crew.
This is That's awesome. White boy. Why is he speaking like that?
Yes. Yeah, nobody ever thinks, Robert Wittman, and I walk in, and they're like, "What?" Yeah. So.
That's great. So tell me, you care to share any great memories from your time in the service with us?
Yeah, there's a ton. I could take, like, the first time I ever flew a jet, when I came from Nichols here. Remember, I'm flying propeller-driven airplanes.
Yeah.
And then the first time I go flying the Air Force, you're in a jet. And I remember coming home that night, and I said, "I can die now. I've gone to heaven. I know what it's about, and I love it. It's awesome. Great." Just that it was something so new. It would be the equivalent of you've been driving your car around, and now you get to go drive a Formula One car on a racetrack.
Right.
And go at the speed of heat and light your hair on fire at the same time, you know? So that's just like one example.
Yeah.
Another one was in training again, I got to break the speed of sound, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, all right, you study it, you're going to go do it, you go out there, you fly it, and it's just like, oh, that was awesome, you know? And
you get to be a big kid forever. It sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always an adventure.
That's great.
Flying formation for the first time. In formation, we're flying, and this is.
So when you say this, just so to make sure everybody understands, is that like the Blue Angels?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. The Blue Angels, they are ultra professional.
They take it to the next level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In the Air Force, when we were training, the closest. So when you're in formation, you have anywhere from 1 to you could have 2 other airplanes with you. There are bigger formations that have ever flown out there. I mean, you could have 15 airplane formations. We call it 15 ship formation. In this case, we would fly anywhere from 2 to 4 ships, so 2 to 4 airplanes together. And you're teaching students who have never done this before. And I had no experience because that's something that in most general aviation aspects, the civilian sector, you don't do a whole lot of formation flying. And so it's not taught very much. There are places that do teach it, and some folks do fly it, which is great, but it's not critical as it is in the military.
Right.
And so in the military, it's vital. And in the second jet that we would go on to, which is the T-38, the one that was supersonic, we were out there flying, you're flying at 500 knots and you're 3 feet away from the other guy's wingtip. Wingtip to wingtip was 3 feet.
Oh, wow.
Now the Blue Angels are somewhere around 12 to 16 inches from their wingtip to the canopy of the other airplane. Not wingtip to wingtip to the canopy or the windscreen.
Wow.
That is super tight.
Yeah.
But again, that's taking it, as you said, to another level.
Yeah.
So that was an experience in itself.
Right.
And then I ended up flying, my second tour, I ended up flying big airplanes, 707s, what we call the tanker in the Air Force. So we carried upwards of 200,000 pounds of jet fuel in the airplane. So we were a gas station in flight, and we would refuel everybody under the sun that needed the gas in flight. And so when we would do a lot of this stuff, we would deploy. So we would take the airplane and we would go to England. And when we're going there, we would deploy for 45, 60, 90 days at a time. But you got to remember, I was probably 30, 31 years old, and my crew, so I called it the captain. We called it the aircraft commander. He was the guy in the left seat. That was me. Then I had a co-pilot. We had a crew of 4. I had a navigator. And then in the back, the guy that ran the boom pod was called the boom operator. So 3 officers and 1 enlisted. The enlisted was the boom operator.
Okay.
But we were all like 20-something years old. I was probably the oldest at 30, 31. And you're taking this multi-million-dollar piece of equipment across the pond. It's kind of like your parents giving you the keys and going, go drive.
Just go
to Florida.
Joyride,
And you're like, Mom gave me the keys and we're going to Florida, dude. And we'd all look around in the middle of the night, we're flying, and I'm like, the Air Force lets us do this. I go, isn't this crazy? But it's just one of those aha moments, I think, when you're flying and you realize how special it is.
Yeah.
And then going on from there, I ended up commanding, probably the highlight of my career is where I commanded a legacy squadron from World War II. So the way the Air Force works is they have all of these squadrons that were in existence way back when, World War I, World War II, Vietnam era, Korean War. And so when a new squadron is put up today or built, set up, they have to designate it, and it's a number. The squadron is a number. So rather than come up with a new number, they go into their archives and they'll pull out something that is of history. That might have been a squadron that was in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, whatever. And they go, you're now, and you continue that legacy. My squadron was the 100th Flying Training Squadron. The 100th was one of 4 World War II Tuskagee Airmen Red Tail squadrons. Those were the black pilots of World War II.
Yeah, right.
And that was under President Roosevelt, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was a test bed program because it was said that the blacks were inferior, afraid of flying, didn't have the aptitude to do it, and were afraid to engage in combat. Well, obviously, history has proved all of that to be false.
Right.
And they became one of the best known aviators in World War II.
There was a movie recently that we watched regarding that.
It's called Red Tails.
Yeah, that might. I'm not sure if that was it or not, but I recall seeing a really good movie.
Red Tails came out probably in 2009, and anyway, and it's about their legacy and some of the So
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
So
It's
they
amazing.
they fought two fronts basically. It was basically racism in the military.
Yeah.
Right.
So their victory of the peace symbol was winning World War II, the war, becoming victorious in that, and also overcoming this adversity of color in the military.
Right.
And so for me, the highlight of all of this was I became the commander of that legacy squadron, the 100th, okay? There were 4, like I said. There was the 99th, the 100th, 301st, and the 302nd were the 4 Tuskegee Airmen squadrons from World War II. The highlight for me, I got to meet the first ever commander from World War II who commanded my squadron, who was one of the original Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh, wow.
His name is Roscoe Brown.
Holy shit.
And Roscoe Brown, he died, I want to say probably 5 or 6 years ago. When I met Roscoe was probably in his 70s.
Yeah.
And he was a professor in New York City. You would have thought he was humble. You would have thought he was a janitor or something, not gregarious in any way. And you actually had to pull information out of him.
Right, right.
But once they got to talking about the history, they would just continue. And it was just phenomenal listening to him talk and meeting him in person.
Isn't it often the case, though, when somebody, at that level, but there's always so much heart and intelligence, and that's how it translates. When you say he was humble.
Yeah. And he was the first American, first American and African American at that, to shoot down a German jet in a P-51 Mustang, which is a propeller-driven airplane. He shot down a jet in a propeller-driven airplane. Wow. So in my office, I had on loan from the Smithsonian this piece of artwork, which was the shoot down. It was showing the airplane shooting it down. And that was Roscoe Brown's flight. His airplane, by the way, or an image of his airplane is hanging in the ceiling at the World War II Museum here in New Orleans.
Oh, we have to go back.
So if you ever get a chance to go, in my opinion, that museum,
twice. It's an amazing museum.
It's probably, I would say, it's probably one of the finest, if not the finest, in the United States. It's on par with the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
I agree.
And his airplane, it's a P-51 hanging from the ceiling. It's a full-size P-51, and it's the only airplane in there that's got the red tail. And that's his airplane. His number was number 7, and he had his wife's name on the nose of the airplane. He called his wife Bunny, and so it says Bunny. So when I got married to my beautiful bride here years later, she wasn't with me through most of my career in the military. But when we got together, I had a shirt made up. So we wear this tuxedo in the military called a mess dress. And in the Air Force, we have what's called a party shirt underneath. So the cuffs are white. The shirt looks white, just a regular looks, like a tuxedo shirt. But when the party, so that's all for the formal part. You got the jacket on. When the party kicks in, we take the jacket off, and the sleeves are whatever you want the sleeves to be. So mine were all World War II airplanes that were on the sleeve.
Okay.
And on the back, I had embroidered a red tail P-51. And I took the number 7 off, which was Roscoe's airplane. And we got married on the 21st. So I put a 21 on there. And then instead of Bunny, his wife's name, I called Robin Baby Girl. And so the nose art was Baby Girl.
Aww.
Oh, cool.
And so when we got married, I wore my mess dress for my wedding.
I got you.
And when the party started, the reception, I took my jacket off.
Baby girl, you ready to dance?
And she had no clue that I had done that. And so
cool.
it just brought everything full circle, and
Nice.
it meant a lot.
Did you cry, Robin?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, yes. Nice.
Okay, so I don't even know if I want to ask the question, but I will. Are you an extrovert or introvert? That's almost a joke, but I will ask it anyway.
Well, it's
if
fun.
you say introvert, I'm just gonna drop the mic.
Well, you may want to,
Hey,
because
the mic's expensive. Don't talk.
if I'm in a group, I would say that I'm a good listener. I'll go in and I'll listen a lot to what people are talking, a conversation, and I'll introduce myself and all of that. But I hang back. So I would say that I'm more of the introvert. And then as I get comfortable with the topic and the people, obviously, then I become more the extrovert.
Right.
And I think over the years, because of the positions I've held in the military, you have to be
Put
more
yourself out
outgoing.
there.
You're going to meet a lot of people. So that's helped me a lot. But I think initially I would say that I was more of an introvert, and now I'm.
It sounds more like you're in observation mode,
Yes.
taking it all in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that makes sense.
He's saving himself.
That's it.
Saving it up for the kill at the end. I got you now.
That's right.
Okay, so tell us, what's your all these different places you've been and places you're able to go with your flying and everything. What is your favorite place to vacation?
Well, it's funny you say that. It's kind of a trick question.
Yep.
You don't have to pick just one, but maybe.
No,
top
no,
top
I want a
three.
favorite.
Oh,
I want
okay.
the-
Well, don't
okay.
I
listen
want
to
your
me.
favorite.
Well,
Yes.
our favorite, and we have a house there, is in Roatan, which is an island off the coast of Honduras.
Uh-huh.
And so we've had a house there now for, I guess, approaching 9 years. And it's surrounded by what's called the Mesoamerican Reef, which is the second largest living reef after the Great Barrier Reef of Australia.
Oh, wow.
And so we talk to folks who we meet along the way, and they're like, hey, we're taking a cruise, and we're going to, one of our stops is Roatan. And I go, what you going to do? We're going to go 4-wheel drive out there. And I'm like, oh, no. I go, you have to put your face in the water. You have to look at what's under the water there, and it's crystal clear.
Oh my God.
And it's just absolutely beautiful. And so that is, at least right now, that's our place to go.
That's awesome.
But I've been to some beautiful places and have had some, again, great opportunities flying around in the Air Force. Unbeknownst to me, I'm thinking I'm going here. For instance, took off one night in England, and it was foggy. And as soon as we rotated, I could see the fog was so thick, and I said, boys, we're not coming back here tonight. And we were going out on a mission, a refueling mission. And so while we're going out there, I told my navigator, I said, you need to call back to the command post, and we need to coordinate where we're going to go tonight. And I said, who's been to Spain? None of us had been to Spain. And I go, who's been to Germany? None of us. So we all settled on, and it was agreed upon with our command post approval to go into Germany that night. And we went there. We were there for 24 hours. So I got a bunch of German beers, some wine, didn't really get to experience the culture. And then I remember going to buy a cuckoo clock, and I remember talking to the lady there, and I'm like, so does everybody here have a cuckoo clock? And her comment to me was, knowing that I was the ugly American that I was, she said, well, let me ask you, does every American wear a cowboy hat? And I said, touche. I said, so anyway, but But that was fun. It was just one of those cool experiences. I was supposed to go to Germany. We were looking forward. I had a buddy of mine who flew with me in the training department, and then we went our separate ways. So he went off and flew F-16s, and I ended up flying the big airplane, the 707. And then fast forward, I'm in Turkey, and I come across and I see that his unit is there. And so I ask around, and I go, hey, is this guy here? And they're like, yeah. So I get in touch with them, and long story short is he ends up coming to fly with me in the tanker, and we let him refuel his buddies in the F-16s, and he's talking to him on the radio, and his call sign was Taco. And they're like, Taco, what are you doing up there? And he's like, oh, man, I'm flying with a buddy of mine. So it was a lot of fun. And then he said, my call sign in the Air Force was Slim, for the singer Slim Wittman. So he's like, Slim, he goes, if you guys ever come to Germany, I'll get you rides in the F-16.
Oh, man.
So we come back to England, and the schedulers go, where do you want to go? And I go, we want to go to Germany. And they go, all right, you're going to go to Germany. Well, like 2 nights before we're going to go to Germany, we're all excited. I get a call from the schedulers, and they go, we're going to take your Germany trip away. We're giving it to our top evaluators here that belong to them. We were like their guest helpers, kind of like we were the, what do you call it? You know, a standby teacher, you know, substitute. So we were the guest help coming in. So they go, we're going to get, and I'm like, they go, well, we're going to send you to Subic Bay. And I go, Subic Bay? And I'm thinking Suda Bay. Suda Bay is in the Philippines.
Okay.
And now we're in England. And I'm thinking, Suda Bay? And they're like, no, it's Subic Bay, which is on the island of Crete.
Oh, I love Crete.
In Greece.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, you
Bring
will
me
love
back.
it. And so sure enough, we go there, and we spent 2 weeks flying missions in and out of Subic Bay, and I fell in love with that island. It was so it was phenomenal. Again, just a little by chance that I happened upon some of these places.
I got to go there once. Oh, what a beauty!
It is. It's beautiful. So, but right now, Roatan is our place to go.
Nice.
So if you were stuck on an island with 5 people, who would they be?
Well, obviously, my bride would be one. Well, we'd have to have.
We like islands.
We like islands too.
Yeah.
We're on the table.
Well, we'd have Robin, obviously. Then we're gonna make this a party, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of our best friends, Robin's best friend, one of my best friends. Her name's Lee. She's grew up with Robin, and we all raised hell together in college here. And she likes rum, so we're rum drinkers. So that's all good.
Rum, beer.
Yeah, so we're like-minded. So we would have Lee come with us. So that would be Lee and Robin. And then, like I said, we got to have a party. So this is all theoretical. So we'd have to have Jimmy Buffett.
Let's bring him back.
Exactly.
What a great loss that was recently.
Oh, absolutely. Such a shame.
Yeah.
But so I'd have Jimmy out there. So he'd be the entertainment for us, okay?
Well done.
Yeah. And then we need somebody to be able to cook for us, even though we like to cook, but now we have to have somebody to cook for us.
Me.
There you go. Me. Come on. But we were thinking of, what's the chef from Spain? Jose Andres.
I love Jose.
And so, again, we think he's done some phenomenal work in his life, you know, especially with...
He's doing great things in D.C.
Oh, great things all around. Whenever there's a catastrophe, he's on site to help people out. Yeah. Puerto Rico, when they got hit, I think, by one of the hurricanes, the last hurricanes, he was there. So we said Jose Andres would be perfect to be out there. He'll be the chef. Yeah. And then, if it's a deserted island, then we've got to figure out a way to survive. Who else but, what's his name? Bear.
Oh, yes, yes.
So
you know who that is, right?
Wait, say
Bear Grylls.
He's special force,
Yeah,
British.
yeah.
He has the
Man versus Wild show.
Oh, yeah.
And so he would be able,
yeah.
he would keep us out of harm's way, and he would be able to teach us. He's the MacGyver, the 21st century
crazy.
MacGyver.
Robert has given
he
this
is
a
so
lot
crazy.
of thought.
I know. This is not just a question.
Yeah. Anyway, that rounds it out. So I mean, we would have fun. Put it that way, and we'd be able to survive.
Awesome. All right, this, I believe, takes us to the pinnacle of the episode. Even though you thought we were there several times before, no, this is it now.
That's right, now.
Are you ready, Frenchie?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Let's see if we can get this good to go. Tell us a story.
So in college, Robin and I dated all through college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was an idiot, I'll admit. I had to go sow my oats elsewhere. So I ended up dating. So I broke up with Robin to date a Latina.
Oh.
And got married to the Latina. And I was married for 19 years. And then that went south. And so we were apart, Robin and I, for 27 years. She got married. We had no knowledge of each other.
Oh my God.
For 27 years. We didn't know if we existed or what.
Okay, I have to interrupt you. So your Robin is in Thibodeau?
No.
No?
Now, Robin, she lived around the world too. I mean, she lived in Lagos. She lived in Singapore, Jakarta, all over the world in her previous life as well. And so, again, we didn't know. Now, she was in the medical field. She was a respiratory therapist.
Okay.
And so she was the apple of my mom's eye. So when I broke up, my mom was truly heartbroken that I had broken up with her. And so anytime we were at a doctor's office, we had no clue. We didn't know where she went. We thought, okay, she's got to be around New Orleans somewhere. And so my mom would go into a doctor's office or whatever. She's like, I was always peeking around the corner to see if I could see Robin or whatever. And in fact, they ran into each other one time at a grocery store parking lot. My mom was pulling into the grocery and Robin was in the car next to her. And they looked at each other, spoke briefly, and that was the last time they had spoken.
Oh, wow.
And so fast forward, like I said, 27 years had gone by since we dated in college. And then out of the blue, when I turned 50, in my mailbox, I was living in San Antonio and I was in the Air Force at the time. I get this birthday card and it said, "Welcome to the 50s Club. I've thought about you all these years." Got email. And it put her email in there and it made no sense. It was like her email's like Mickey Mouse. So it wasn't a name that, made any sense to me. And
so she didn't put her name. It was just an email.
And then she wrote Robin at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
And then her return address label still had her old return address labels from her previous marriage, which was her previous name. And I'm like, that last name does not ring a bell.
Oh, I got you.
So then I email her and I go, okay, I've known 3 Robins in my life. One's my next door neighbor. That's not you. The other one is my insurance agent. That's not you. And the other one I dated at NSU, where I flew out of TBD, which is what we call the airport over here. 27 years ago. Is that you? And she goes, yes, that's me.
Oh my God.
So that was in 2009. We reunited and we dated and it was like no time had been lost. And we got married in 2012. And here's the pinnacle of this. So I knew my mom at the time was failing from congestive heart failure.
Are you about to make us cry?
Yes.
Oh God.
And so
okay.
He's an onion.
So
Think of him as an onion.
So I told Robin, I said, you need to call my mom. This was right after we got back together. And we hadn't even seen each other. So this is just all through phone that we're talking. I was in San Antonio. She was living in Houston at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to call my mom. I said, she loved you like a daughter. And she said, oh, I remember your mom so dearly. And she said, I'm going to call her. And so about a week goes by and we talk again. And I go, did you ever call my mom? She goes, no. And she goes, I'm going to call her. So she said, she called. And she said, I said one word when she answered. She said, Miss Wittman. And she said, Robin. And she said she knew my voice
That's
and
crazy.
they spoke for however long it was. And Robin knew, because my mom was on oxygen at the time.
Yeah.
And she knew that, she was having a little hard time talking. So she said, we're going to pick up this conversation another time, she said. And she said, I'd love to see you sometime. And my mom said, I would love to see you too. My mom died about a week or two after that.
Oh.
And so I said, she went to heaven knowing that
y'all went back together.
we're back together and
That's
that I was
awesome.
happy again. So,
That's great. That's a great story.
so it's a great story.
Oh, that's amazing.
Nothing to do with aviation, but it's a great story.
Frenchie's not talking because she's tearing up. She's crying. I'm just filling in the audience because it's not a video podcast yet.
Wow, that's a beautiful love story.
No, it really is. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
This was amazing. Thank you for coming onto our podcast today. And just all these stories were so awesome. This is the first time we've had a pilot on the show. And if we do ever have another one, I think he's going to be hard pressed to measure up to you, Robert. We've really enjoyed the stories. Yeah, all great stories.
Well, I certainly appreciate y'all having me. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Frenchie, I think there's nothing left to say, but just take us out.
Frenchie is out, like completely.
Yeah, she's.
And remember, those who don't believe in magic will never find it. We all have stories to tell. What's yours? Bye now.
You guys take care. Thanks again, Robert. We hope you had a good time with us.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.